A lot of people here asked me to ask you what you think of the Naomi Osaka situation and how it could apply to the 49ers. But let's just talk about Naomi, the Naomi-ness of Naomi. If you don't know, she's a 23-year-old tennis prodigy who withdrew from the French Open because she has intense social anxiety and didn't want to do the media press obligations. And they told her, well, they fined her, and then she withdrew to not be a distraction. So a lot of people want to know what you think of that, Dad. What do you think?
Okay. You have to understand, I don't really follow tennis that much. I understand she's probably the best or second best player, women's player.
I think she's ranked number 2.
Yeah. So she's a big deal. And she's won 4 majors.
Yes.
I understand also she's a very nice young lady.
Yes.
Okay. My feeling about interviews and the press are very clear, but I'm going to talk about her as a separate case in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
When you had players like Marshawn Lynch or Colin Kaepernick who were crummy with the media or didn't want to talk, or Jerry Rice, sometimes when he was a player, he could be very standoffish and condescending and didn't want to talk. Now, Jerry is grown into quite a mature adult, and I think we've talked about him before. Iggy and I like him very much. I'm talking about him when he was a young guy.
25, yeah.
I've improved. He's improved. So, Jerry, please, I'm not putting you down. I'm just talking about how you were when you were young, and we all had problems when we were young. It's in their contracts that part of their duties as a professional athlete are to talk to the media, because these leagues, the Tennis Association, the NFL, the NBA, they need the players to talk. They need to promote their league. It's part of what it means.
How they make money.
Yes.
It's not amateur sports.
So when Kaepernick would answer in the fewest possible words, it burned me up. And I knew he was doing it because he was a jerk. Yeah. I'm not talking about his social stances. I'm not getting into it.
No, it was like, this is a Barry Bonds move. It's a Barry Bonds move. And Bonds
he was as bad as Barry Bonds. So my initial feeling about Osaka is she signed a contract. She has an obligation. She should talk to the media. But no. And here's what I mean. If Kaepernick had gone to the 49ers and said, you know, I would really like to fulfill my obligations. I have social anxiety. Mm-hmm. And then if Bob Lang, it was the guy in charge at the time in PR, had come and said, look, we have a tough situation. Colin Kaepernick has social anxiety. He feels very bad about this, but he doesn't feel up to answering your questions. My response as a journalist would be, I don't want to add to anyone's social anxiety. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be a bad person. I'm not a bad person. Mm-hmm. I'm a nice person. And I bet Matty Mayoko, Matt Barrows, all of these people would say, of course not. Is there a way we can work this out?
Yeah.
So let's come back to Osaka. Her people should have gone to the people at the French Open 6 months ago.
Iggy. Right.
Said, look, we have a problem. We want to work this out.
Yeah. Let's find a solution.
Talk about it.
Yep.
And find a solution, as opposed to all of a sudden at the French Open, the people who are running it don't know what to do. They want her to talk. This should have been handled before the tournament even started, Iggy.
Yeah.
And then it could have been as simple as, we will type our questions and she could type back answers.
Yes.
It's not the best, but we're trying to accommodate her because we want, the point is she should play. Right. She should not, it's not good for anyone for her to leave the French Open. It's not good for her competitors, for the tournament, or the media.
Tennis. Yeah.
For tennis. You want to keep her in. Yeah. So with someone who is suffering, God, I don't want to add to suffering.
Right.
I mean, if she played poorly, I'd want to be able to write honestly about it. Right. But the fact that she says, I'll pay my fine.
Yeah.
I'll pay my fine.
Yeah.
Help me. I would want to accommodate her, but I feel her people were too slow. They should have handled it earlier. And as I say, you could type responses. Yeah. You know what I mean? Or you could have her agent or her coach in the room answering for her, and Naomi could be off mic and off camera and whisper answers. I know it seems silly, but there are ways to do it that this poor young lady didn't have to be humiliated, be frightened, and have to leave the tournament.
Now, I've been reading up on what she did and what she said. The first thing she wrote troubled me, and then she corrected it. And I want to say why it troubled me, because I feel like this could have implications across sports. What she first wrote was that she didn't like the nature of press conferences in general for anyone. She felt that she wrote that journalists are doubters, and she shouldn't have to subject herself to doubters, and that it's not right to have to answer questions after a loss, that journalists are just rubbing it in. I disagree with both of those things very strongly. Then she came back a few days later and was like, look, I expressed myself poorly. I have social anxiety. This is something that's personal to me. Please respect that. That I totally respect. The other thing makes me nervous. Like, is this what athletes are going to do now and be like, look, I don't want to do this, and I'm just going to say that journalists are affecting my social anxiety? Like, that's a cop-out. But I don't think she's a cop-out. I just hope that future 49ers don't say that, hey, man, Grant is affecting my mental health because he asked me a question after a loss. Like, come on.
You know, Iggy, I don't like her first statement. I had not been aware of it. First of all, to say that journalists, i.e. all journalists, are douters, it's a very ignorant thing to say.
Yeah.
Because journalists have different personalities.
Yeah.
In addition, she's a woman tennis player. I think a lot of journalists would be in her corner.
Yes.
Either or neutral or in her corner. And she's a young lady.
Yes.
And you don't want to put her under pressure. So I think what she said is ignorant and shows her social anxiety.
Right. And then she comes back and said, look, I expressed myself incorrectly. This is about me. I want to express that I've had depression. I've had social anxiety. This is very difficult. Okay, fair enough. God love you. Don't want to make it worse for you. But I would hate to think that the new norm would be people coming into the NFL being like, I'm not talking because you are giving me stress and I don't need it. Like, no, I hope it doesn't. I don't like that.
I wouldn't like that at all. And I want to say something else. She, in the first statement, objected to having to talk after losses.
Yeah.
So you can only talk after a win?
Yeah, what's that?
I mean, hold on a second.
Yeah.
You just lost to Serena Williams. I assume that was hard. And I assume that the match was very hard. What you're going to get from the media is not what you got from Serena Williams. You could stand up to her.
Yeah.
You didn't melt on the courts. This is going to be nothing like losing to Serena Williams.
Good point.
Get over it.
Yeah.
And this will help you grow as a person.
Yes.
No, I don't like the idea that athletes can only talk after wins.
Yes.
That's really bad, Iggy.
So the first statement was her talking about press conferences and athletes in general,
I don't like
relationship, which bothered me. But then when she came back, she said, look, she basically said, forget that. I don't really stand behind it. I expressed myself incorrectly. This is what I want to say. It's about me. I have these issues and please respect it. I totally respect it. So
I do too.
Yeah. Two different things.
I'm glad she clarified it.
Yeah.
Had it been only the first statement, I would have been pissed.
Yeah.
But I'm glad she clarified it, and I take her at her word. I wish the French Open could have treated her better. I wish her handlers, I'll use that word, could have approached them sooner and worked out a compromise. And I wish her all the best going forward.
There doesn't have to be an adversarial relationship between the press and athletes. And I feel like sometimes young athletes, 22, 21, especially really famous ones, feel like they're a target and they're being attacked by the media. And it's too bad. Maybe some are, but usually they're not. And I hope we can, what I want to say is the young athletes on the 49ers all seem very pro media. They like talking. They talk at length. Maybe it's not a generational thing. I think my nightmare is that athletes will just stop talking and it'll be, I don't want to do this anymore. And then the league will be like, fine, we don't have to. And it'll just be covering sports.
Okay. Couple of things. I don't think that'll happen.
Yeah.
Because as crummy as the NFL is, they're not insane. They know they need to promote their league.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
But here's the other thing, Iggy, and I don't want you to read that thing. I want you to look.
I'm sorry. I'm making sure that I didn't lose this one guy. Okay, I got it. Okay, let's talk. I'm ready.
Because this is an important point for you.
Yes.
let's say the nightmare were to come true and athletes no longer talk to the media. What do you care? I never cared.
Good point.
I was a columnist, and you're an opinion guy,
Yeah,
right?
good point. Yeah, good point.
So,
Yeah.
so if somebody on the team doesn't want to talk to you,
Fine.
like Trent Williams doesn't want to talk to you, you can talk about Trent Williams. You
Yeah,
can
it's
talk
true.
about his play. You
Yeah.
could talk about what your impression is of him. So my attitude when I was a columnist, and I was kind of controversial.
Yeah.
If Joe Blow didn't want to talk to me, that was his business. I could talk about Joe Blow, and I could get other people to talk about him. So Iggy,
Correct.
I think it's a non-issue for you.
I agree.